This week, I've been thinking a lot about criticism, like being critiqued. In other words, you might be familiar with are maybe feedback. Some people might try to compliment you, but trying to give information for you to change or do something. But the things in which people are trying to tell you that you could do something better. Or maybe who you are in a relationship or in a context. They're like, hey, I think if you just did this, you could maybe actually be a little bit better in the way that I see this. Or of course, there's criticism that's like, man, you're just wrong. You're just not doing good. And then there's even criticism that goes really deep into your personhood and hey, I just don't like who you are. And I mean, I don't know, there's something about me that really does appreciate people who can be brutally honest, but there's also something about me that hates brutally honest people because they're brutally honest, right? There's a couple things there, but a lot of it boils down to this idea of criticism. And I wonder this morning, have you been critiqued lately? Has anybody, if you think about the last week, last couple weeks, last year, has anybody critiqued you? They've critiqued something that you've done. They've critiqued something you've said. They've critiqued who you are and how you go about something. So as you think through that, I came across this little audio clip that I thought was pretty interesting. So let's listen to Kieran real quick.
Hey, Kieran.
Hello, Adam.
How are you?
Doing well, and you?
Good. This is Kieran Rao. He used to be a manager at a financial company. Like most managers, he spent a ton of time in meetings, and most of them were pretty run-of-the-mill. But there's one meeting that Kieran will never forget. Here's Kieran breaking down a recording of that meeting for us.
So we were in this large white tent, 200 people sitting around, the top 200 to 300 managers.
So the next two sections are really going to be about practical application.
We've been talking about multiple strategic points, and up comes a chart.
This is a list of force ranking the people in this room by performance.
Which was labeled the worst managers.
So these are people we love. Some of the people in this room on these names probably shouldn't be here.
And I was number one on the list.
I look at this name, I hired Kieran. And apparently in his first couple years, he's not doing that well. Now I'm working with him to try and do
So you're totally caught by surprise. You're staring in a room of 200 people and being told you are the single worst manager in that room.
That's right.
What was that like?
It was intense.
Intense. He describes that intense. 200 to 300 people that he works with that are coworkers that do the same job that he does. They're all in the room, and his name is the first. The last time you want to be the first person, right? He's the worst manager in that room, and it's on there for everyone to see. And his boss is clearly just talking about him, yeah, I hired Kieran. It's apparently my fault because I hired him, right? You would imagine right now, say you were just with your group of friends and all of a sudden you had to stand in order of who's the best friend or not, and you're the last one, right? Or maybe it is your work. Whoever your coworkers are, or the people that are doing a similar job for you, and you're in, you're meeting with everybody and you literally are the worst and everybody sees it. Maybe it's in your family and you're just there around the dinner table and everyone starts to talk about who actually contributes, who's the best family member. And ultimately that means who's the worst family member. If you just go through the whole list of your beings, you're there, you're in that room, and I'm curious, you just found out you're the worst. What starts to happen to you? What does your body start to do? What does your mind start to do? Go ahead and give me some feedback. What starts to happen?
Shut down and shame.
Yeah. Yeah. It's uncomfortable. Start sweating. Yeah. Yeah. I start rebelling. Ooh, I'm gonna. I ain't the worst. You're the worst. Yeah. I know that one because I've probably said it 100 times. Yeah. What else?
If it's driving, are you silent in the
Sign language, there you go. There's other people in the other car, there's sign language used to communicate with them. Yes. One or two more? Fight or flight, you have a choice here. I'm either going to press in or, man, I can't. Whoa, this is too uncomfortable, I'm out. I can't stay here. One more, maybe?
I just keep thinking crumble.
Crumble. Like, everything just fell out from under me. I thought I actually was, like, helpful in this space, but apparently I'm the worst. Like, imagine yourself, like, right now, like, someone just came to you. Like, what's that area? Where were you this last week, and you were with a group of people, and all of a sudden you were just the worst in the room? Like, that, none of that sounds good. So this idea of criticism, even as we hear Kieran's perspective here, he just talks about being in a large room with a bunch of people and he's now the worst and it's publicly displayed. And maybe sometimes criticism happens one-on-one in private and you go to see your boss, or maybe it's with your spouse, or maybe you got to critique something of a child, whatever it is, or you're the child being critiqued. Like, either way, I don't know how many people look forward to criticism. And if I'm being honest with you, I hate it. Because what it does is it holds up a mirror in front of me, and I like to live in a world where, no, I like to think about myself this way, but then the mirror actually says, no, you're like this. And oftentimes the people giving the criticism, and I'm not going to talk today about how we're all pretty bad at actually giving good criticism. I'm not going to get there, but that's a reality. But ultimately, the people giving criticism are holding up a mirror. And now, the good news is in all of that, like, we can actually get through this. Aristotle actually said, he said this: criticism is something we can avoid easily. Right? So as you think about those feelings, as you think about being the worst coworker, as you think about being the worst family member, you're definitely the worst friend. Like, as you're going through all that, well, good news, you can actually avoid criticism pretty easily. Here's all it takes. You just avoid it by saying nothing, doing nothing, and being nothing. Like, that's good news, right? Like, you can avoid criticism. You just really can't say anything that you ever want to say. You can't do any of the things that you actually want to do. And my gosh, you definitely cannot be whoever you are. And you forget about becoming the person you think you want to become. Now, if you do that well, you will avoid criticism. It's that simple. I'm just going to pray and close out, and now we can go. Like, that was it. But I don't know about you, like, I do want to say something. Like, I actually want to do something that has, like, meaning and significance, and I want to participate in certain ways that I feel wired to and called in. I certainly want to become something. Like, I want to become more than I am right now, more than definitely who I was 5, 10, 20 years ago. I want to, in 30 years, want to become more than what I did 10 years from now. Like, I want to keep growing. So I don't know about you, but I don't want to just say nothing for the sake of avoiding criticism. I don't want to just do nothing, and I don't want to just become nothing. And the reality in this, I think what happens as we continue our series through Proverbs, we're looking at wisdom for a wired world from the ancients. I don't know about you, but I'm wired to self-protection. I'm wired to, if I can't avoid the spaces of being critiqued and actually having a mirror in front of me, I can very quickly find the spaces where I know I will be told what I want to hear. Insert social media. Insert that one friend who just tells you what you want to hear. Insert the mom of all the people that end up on American Idol and shouldn't be there. Like, I mean, you just keep going, right? Like, I don't know about you, but I can continue to find spaces where I will hear what I want to hear. I'll find the people that will tell me what I want them to tell me. And what might feel like short-term growth in that, because I'm avoiding pain of criticism and critique and feedback, I wonder long-term what that does for us. I wonder if we ever actually say something. I wonder if we actually ever do something, and I wonder if we actually ever become something. Because the ancients put it this way. Here in Proverbs 15, there's kind of a collection of verses. That happened. There we go. See, I'm telling you guys, it's tricky. Thank you, Kelly. Like just that little thing right there, you know? Stern discipline awaits anyone who leaves the path. The one who hates correction will die. How about that? Oh, you don't want to be corrected? Well, then you'll just die. That's encouraging. Mockers resent correction, so they avoid the wise. I'm not going to be in a room of people who actually know things and have experienced life and probably could actually give insight into who I'm becoming. I'm going to avoid that because I don't want to be corrected. The discerning heart seek knowledge, but the mouth of a fool feeds on folly. I will continue to take in the things that I want to hear that eventually do not help me grow. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. The things that I want to say, the things that I want to do, the things that I want to become could actually happen with many advisors. But again, with many advisors comes critique. With many advisors comes correction. With many advisors comes feedback. And about you, but I've already felt that I want to avoid all of that because it's painful and it's honest. You know what happens in the brain when someone starts to critique you? Something happens so fast that we can't even feel it happening. But what they essentially say is your ego takes over. And your ego kind of becomes like this little militant authoritarian leader and dictator in your head that starts to actually interpret the information coming at you in ways that ultimately you try to just hear what you want to hear and you push away anything that you don't want to hear. That it actually starts to run you internally to sweat, to become defensive, to be nervous, to fight or flight, to do all the things, to respond, to push against, to do all the things that we were talking about earlier. It's your ego. It's who you think you are. Starts to actually delineate the information before you can even think to delineate the information that someone is giving you. And Brendan, you mentioned earlier shame. And see, one thing for me that I know to be true in my life, oftentimes if someone is giving me feedback or critique, and sometimes it can be very well done and is actually wanted and desired, I can still sit there and feel that whatever's being critiqued that I do actually feels like a critique of me. Like when we did church surveys a few weeks ago, the ones I asked you for and prepared myself for, and you're talking about the things in the church, I have to make sure that I am in a good place to read those, because if not, I feel attacked. I want to get defensive. I want to say, you have no idea what you're talking about. Honestly, it actually takes work to get into a place to let the very quick reaction happen, but then pause and say, wait, I'm in a room of people that love me. I'm in a room of people that I trust. I'm in a room of people that I think God speaks to and works through and that I want to hear from. But it's that it takes work. And I wonder for you, how many times if someone critiques your work, you get defensive and you feel shame because you actually identify as your work. I wonder if someone that critiques your singleness, it hurts extra bad because, well, you identify as just single. I wonder if someone, when they critique your parenting, that it hurts more because all you are is a parent. See, I think the ego comes into play because ego in who we are gets attacked when someone's critiquing what we do. And are not those two things separate? I'd like to think so, but everything in our lives tells us no. You actually are what you say. You actually are what you do. And therefore, if it's not good enough, you're not good enough. And what does that do over time? Who are we becoming in that? Well, if you look when we were all kind of pressed into this living from home and can only communicate online, I think we really saw what it's doing to us over time. When we got boiled down to just our thoughts and our opinions, and all we could do is critique our thoughts and opinions, we started to subject people to just their thoughts and their opinions, and we started to feel subjected by people to just our thoughts and our opinions. And we divided, and we divided, We divide it, and we divide it. And isn't not just the being, it's the ways we view the world. Also, it can hurt extra bad when someone critiques your political view because maybe you've become your political view. It hurts real bad when someone critiques your way of religion because all of a sudden you've become your religion. And mind you, these are all good things. They can all be very good things when they are kept as things and not just who we are. And in all those things, all those areas of your life, I wonder this. I wonder if the areas in which you avoid criticism in, God wants to do a work within. Like if you sit here and think right now, the areas that you are most avoidant to receiving criticism, the areas that you don't want anyone speaking into your life about, they have no right. The ones in which that one person that says that one thing about the thing that you do and you just like lose your mind, maybe that's the area that God wants to do the most work within. I don't know. I'll let you decide that. So on that note, looking for one very courageous and vulnerable person this morning that wants to be very brave in front of us all and really have no idea where this is going to go over the next handful of minutes. What I want to do is I'm curious if anybody would like to just try a coaching session on with me real quick. And before you raise your hand, I have a few preliminary things to this that you need to abide by before you raise your hand. One is that you understand that really all I'm going to do is simply just ask you some questions to help you go a little bit deeper in something that you've experienced or are thinking through or processing right now or might be here in the near future, okay? So that's one. I'm simply going to ask questions. And maybe there's a little bit of a pastoral thing attached to it on the end, okay? So I'm going to ask you questions, meaning that you're going to be responding by kind of going through some layers of things that are going to feel uncomfortable. And I think that's a good thing, and I'll get to that in a second. But I am curious this morning, if anybody wants to be critiqued in a few ways. Hold on, no, I said now you're out. I had a few things you have to abide by, and I'm not done. So that's it. The first one was waiting until I said all the things. But listen, you have a recent criticism. Like, recent, maybe it was this morning driving here in the car, I don't know, and someone critiqued the way you did something. It's very likely, like half the room maybe. So maybe it was this morning, maybe it was this week, but there's a very recent criticism or critique that you've received, and you're kind of still processing it. Maybe it's a certain area you're now thinking through, like, oh, this is the area that, man, no one can do this. Well, I'm really curious to ask you a couple questions around that area of your life or what you do or what you want to say. And then maybe you're preparing to give someone criticism, and you want to be coached through that a little bit. Okay, I'll throw that one in there as to kind of take a little bit of pressure off of you to go deeper. And again, I mean, David always raised his hand, and he's already out, so I got to wait for another hand to see if anyone else goes up. But in case, I do have another way of going about this that will trick you into being coached, and I'll get to that one if I need to. But David, please wait. Let's see if any other hands go up. Seriously. Okay, and all those three rules, like it's attached to one of those specifically. Let's do this. Okay, so I'm going to hand you a mic. Can we all say thank you to Virginia for processing this? Thank you. So like that little bit, and again, obviously you can see why getting through like an hour could be helpful, because then we can kind of start to dig out and move towards, and maybe there's a redo that could happen there that we could coach through. What does it look like now to go back or respond to or kind of continue to progress in this? But to turn this to me, I resonate with that in that I feel defensive when I'm being asked if I did or knew something or did not do something because I think that I already did it. And again, for me, it goes back to ego and it goes back to shame. And so then I could feel that same exact thing. But the challenge in all of us when we're receiving feedback, critique, criticism, whatever it is we cannot control the other person. And I know for me, I long for a world in which everyone can relate to each other perfectly and tell me exactly how I need to hear it, right? We'll work through personality assessments to best work on as teams how to actually communicate to one another in a way it's going to be best received. That takes a massive amount of work. Average humanity is not doing that ever. We're not even thinking about how we communicate to others or what we say. And so for us, I think for me, again, to turn this on me is, who am I no matter what someone else says. What's going on in my internal world, no matter what someone else says or how they say it. Because I'll be the first to blame someone else for getting me riled up. I'll be the first to blame someone else for making me defensive. I'll be the first to say, well, hold on, you can't. Well, don't do, you guys say any of those ever? The first to go to that place. And I think there is actually some good news in this, because I think Aristotle left us hanging a little bit. It sounded like good news in the beginning and then just kind of crumbled from there. But there's a beautiful thing that happens as we work through these things, and actually we're going to turn back to Kieran real quick, because I think he might even say better what I'm trying to say. So let's listen to him again.
It was right at that 1.5-year mark that Kieran Rao, the guy you heard earlier, found himself being told he was the company's worst manager in front of 200 of his colleagues. Kieran might have been prepared, but it still hurt.
I was probably turning as red as my Indian complexion allows me to, and I was describing it as, like basically dressing for the beach one day in flip-flops and your swimwear, and you swing your door open and you're in a full-force winter storm.
The thing you need to understand about Kieran is that before Bridgewater, he'd already had a successful career. Actually, several. He was a doctor and worked with the World Health Organization. He was a principal in a consulting firm, and he worked at a successful investment firm. He'd never failed like this before. But what happened next was something I've never seen anywhere else.
Are you embarrassed? Hide from everyone? Like, how did you move forward?
No, I felt great.
I'm sorry, what?
I felt great.
You felt great? Do you realize how strange that sounds?
It does.
You can hear this in the tape of the meeting right after he found out his ranking.
I'm Kiran Rao, by the way. By now, probably notorious/famous #1 on the list. I think it's a great list, and I agree that I'm in that spot. This leaves me more energized versus not. I get energy from it, and I look forward to helping or leaving, whichever is the right answer.
It's funny, I called my wife on my way home and said, this happened. They put up the list of the worst managers of Bridgewater, and I was #1. And I had an amazing, energizing day, and it felt great. And she said, that's wonderful, Kiran, I'm proud of you.
She said she was proud of you?
Yeah, because...
For being the worst manager at Bridgewater?
No, for looking in the mirror, for not cringing from what I look like, for being able to see reality for what it is. And I probably reached home by then. It's a short commute.
How often do you hear that? How often do you feel that? I listen to that and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to be him. Like that to me is what it looks like to become someone that can be criticized and yet still say something and do something and be something. And by the way, David, thanks for letting me banter a little bit with you there and extending some grace as I joke around with you and then move on. I love you, and we'll do another session. But I just want to note that real quick. But Kieran actually just did the thing that sounds, I don't know about you, but could change the world in some ways. He calls his wife to celebrate that he's been publicly shamed in 300 people. Essentially is what he's saying. Because I had a chance to look in the mirror and I didn't cringe. What kind of statement is that? Proverbs 15 ends up going in this direction, and I think the ancients have some wisdom here. Whoever heeds life-giving correction will be at home among the wise. It's weird to think that, if I actually receive correction, if I make room for it, I might actually be among the wise. The thing I want to be among the wise. Sometimes that means I just need to be more wise, and no, it actually means I need to receive correction. Those who disregard discipline despise themselves, but the one who heeds correction gains understanding. My favorite wisdom's instruction is to fear the Lord, and humility comes before honor. It's almost like they're trying to say that if we do the lowering, God will do the raising. If we actually do the work to humbly receive correction and criticism and critique, that God actually wants to do something in that to then actually restore honor and to bring us closer and to make us more whole and to give us something to say and to give us something to do and to become. And in this, I think of the invitation and transformation here, criticism reminds us that we are people in progress. But isn't it people in progress that actually profess God's goodness? See, every time I'm critiqued, it reminds me that I'm not there yet. I haven't arrived yet. I'm not whole yet. I'm not complete yet. I'm not done yet. And it's the people who are actually in progress, who haven't arrived, that can profess that God is good. That even though I am not complete, that God is with me. Even though I don't have it all put together, God wants to work in my life. Even though I don't have it figured all out, God actually wants to do something with me. Like again, that can change the world. Because it's those who fight to be among the wise that usually abuse the power that they have. It's usually those that fight to be at the top of everything that continue to push down others over and over and over again. They want to gain honor with everything that they know, yet they crush other people left and right. The church has done this for so long. A lot of white men in power have done this for so long. But it's those who are willing to be humble, to sit amongst people that will give them wisdom and correction and guidance, and they'll take it, and their life will actually change to something good and beautiful and honest and hopeful. Check this out real quick. I'm almost done, I promise. Jesus says a few things about this, and I think Paul captures this well. Jesus says, like, if you want to be first, you got to be last. Like that's weird, right? He said, if you want to be great, you actually have to become like the least. That doesn't really make sense. And anything else that I do, it's actually better to give than to receive. And I think Paul picked up on this. Paul was a New Testament writer. He came kind of late in the games. I don't know if you know Paul, like he used to go around murdering Christians. Like he was a religious elite. He was the one who had all the wisdom and could not be confronted or criticized or critiqued because he's the one that had the answers. He's the one that set the tone. And he went around killing those who started to follow Jesus because they didn't do the things that he thought they were supposed to be doing based on the religious norms. And one day he's riding along, going on a mission to go kill more Christians, and God knocks him off his horse and blinds him. And it takes a few days, but he gets his vision back, and God essentially said, look, you're doing a lot of work, but now you're going to start working for me. And then Paul goes on within about a 25-year span to write about 13 books in the New Testament. And I want you to hear his very first book, which we think is probably most likely his very first book. Listen to this intro he gives. I love this. He says, I, Paul, and my companions in faith here send greetings to the Galatian churches. My authority for writing to you does not come from any popular vote of the people, nor does it come through appointment of some human higher up. It comes directly from Jesus the Messiah and God the Father, who raised him from the dead. I'm God commissioned, so I greet you with the great words, grace and peace. I don't know about you, but like, Paul is something. He wants everyone to know, and I think there's some good reason in this, but I also think he wants everyone to know that he is an apostle, that he is great, that he has been sent by the God, that you need to hear what he has to say. He is coming in with people. Do you not see me with my people? And then he kind of goes on and he starts to work through some different ways that he describes himself and what he's up to. He ends up in prison about halfway through, and he really changes there. And he talks about the gifts that God's given him. And he's kind of like this, he's a super apostle. He's up here. He's on the top of everything. And then what is almost his very last letter to the young person he's raising up named Timothy, he says this about himself about 25 years later. I love what this is, Eugene Peterson's version of this translation. Here's a word you can take to heart and depend on. Jesus Christ came into the world to save sinners. I'm proof. Public sinner number one. I'm the one that he's come to save of someone who could never have made it apart from sheer mercy. I could have never done any of this on my own. I don't have enough. It's God's mercy. And now he shows me off. He's proud of me. He wants people to see what he's doing in and through my life. He wants people to hear the things that I have to say. And now he shows me off evidence of his endless patience to those who are right on the edge of trusting him forever, trusting that he can do things in spite that I can't, trusting that he knows way more than I will ever know, trusting that he is the one who's complete, so there I don't have to be complete, but I can be made complete because he's complete. Like all of this, do you hear how it could change the posture? Someone critiques you, and you're with your kids in the grocery store, and they're screaming out of control, and someone looks at you and says, get your children in control, and you want to be like, I'm about to get you under control. But you say, I know, I'm trying the best that I can. This is so hard. I've never done this before. When I go back and read church surveys, I take them and say, guys, help me. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm here with you also in the 2.5 year of Midtown. This is the farthest I've been here also. I don't know what the heck's going on completely. Can you help me? I want your criticism. Please give more. I may not listen to all of it, right? Because we don't have to take everything everyone says, and we're not going to be everything that everyone thinks that we should be, and there's good counsel in working through things. But when someone critiques you in your job, oh, I know, I want to be a better employee. I would love to hear what you have to say. Oh, here's one. Your spouse. Hey, can you tell me how I can love you better? Because I know I suck at this. Like, I want to be a better spouse. Can you help me? Help me. Tell me the things that I can't see. You see how humility literally changes our disposition and how we operate and who we're becoming and how we say it and how we go about it. Criticism reminds us that we're people in progress, and it's people in progress that profess God's goodness. And the people around you in your life need to hear God's goodness. That it's not about being perfect, but it's about being in progress. It's not some moralism, but it's more about baptism, where we just submit our ways and say, I'm broken. I need help. I need to be critiqued. I want to become better. I want to do better. And in all of that, God so loved the world that before you could ever figure it out or get better or do anything, he pursued you and sent his son to die for you. To say, you are broken. And in your brokenness and in your weakness, I want to do a good work. I want to show you off. I want to bring you along. I want to make you better. And if we can't receive critiques from the person living next to us, can we ever receive a critique from God? If I can't be humble enough to hear that I'm an impatient father, could I ever hear from God that I am internally angry and that he wants me to change? So the way we receive critiques is not just from other people, but I believe it's also from God. And the ways we receive critique from God, I believe it's also the ways we receive critiques from other people. So here's one practical application. We're going to move in ministry time if Ish and Rob want to come up. Here's what I'm doing this week. I'm going to get ahead of it. And I want to invite you to get ahead of it also. Because I think when we say we want to get ahead of something, we're saying that we want to embody something. And we can sit back and we can let the world come at us and critique us, and we can get defensive and impatient and hurt, and that's still going to happen. I'm not trying to pitch something where you're never going to feel hurt by being critiqued. You will continue to be hurt by being critiqued. But what you can do is you can get ahead of it and say, hey, I want your criticism. I actually want to bring the critics of my life closer, to say, what do you see in me? For those of you that are in home to home, ask your home group, how did I show up around the table this last semester? For those that are serving, hey, ask your leader, how am I showing up as serving? I'm committed in these 3 ways. Caitlin, my wife, this week, how am I doing at loving you? How can I go better in expressing my love? And how am I doing as a father? In what areas can I grow to serve my children better? Those are written out. Those are my 2 questions for my wife this week. I have at least 3 leaders in the church that I'm meeting with this week. And to them, how am I doing as a leader? When am I most helpful? When am I most hurtful? And I want them to honestly tell me. And I have a friend, long distance. How have I been as a friend to you lately? What can I do differently to best communicate how much I value our friendship? That's what it looks like to get ahead of it. Because now I'm in a posture to say, tell me. I've laid myself down. I'm here to serve. One of the things I'm starting to incorporate in my life is a guiding principle that says any room I enter, there's 2 things I want to hear over myself. And one is that I'm safe, and one is that I'm here to serve. I'm safe, and I'm here to serve. I'm safe in God's love. I'm safe in his hand. I'm safe in the work that he's already done and he continues to do in my life. I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to be anything that I'm not. I don't have to just change and be perfect all of a sudden to feel safe. I can feel safe in a room, no matter what that room looks like. And may I never forget that any room I enter into, I'm here to serve. My life is not my own. My life is not my own. I'm safe and I'm here to serve. And in that posture, please tell me, where can I grow? How can I do better? And I'm going to filter it, and I'm going to ask trusted people what these other people said about me just to make sure that they're the crazy ones and I'm not. I'm going to say, hey, they're wrong, right? I'm not like that. But I guarantee you there's a good amount of truth in it no matter what. Can we do that? Can we be those people? Can we practice that with each other. We practice that in our homes. Go ask your neighbors how you've been as a neighbor. Which they're going to start with like, oh, it's the first time I've met you. Oh, it's a good place to start. It's a good critique. I'm going to take that. Good. Oh, man. Well, hey, now I'm doing it, so that's good. Okay, let's stand. Let's stand.